Welcome to the TikTok Reloader. Today, we're looking into a whole set of new gun laws. Some have just kicked in across the U.S. in early 2025. Others are coming up soon before the second half of the year.
Right. And our goal here is really to cut through all the legal jargon.
Exactly. Give you, the listener, a clear picture of what's changed, what's about to change. We're drawing on info from our source and referencing a lot of other sources on the internet. They're a pretty well-known online resource for gun enthusiasts.
Yeah, they cover a lot. And we're seeing a real mix. Things like trigger bans, changes to red flag laws, new rules about firearm storage.
And even this whole thing with merchant category codes for gun purchases, right? Some states banning them, others mandating them.
Exactly. It's quite the spread.
So consider this your sort of state-by-state rundown. We'll hit the key changes, look for trends, and point out where states are really going in different directions.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's dive in. California first. They had changes effective January 1st.
Right, California. First up is Assembly Bill 1483. This deals with bulk private gun purchases and sales.
Okay, bulk private sales. What does that mean in practice?
Well, basically, that 30-day waiting period California has between buying handguns or semi-auto rifles from a dealer.
Yeah.
This bill extends that waiting period. Now, it also applies to private party transactions for those same types of firearms.
Okay. So if you're buying or selling, say, 2 handguns privately, you have to wait 30 days between those 2 separate deals.
Pretty much. There are some exceptions, for inheritances, like settling an estate or if someone's legally required to give up their firearms. But generally, yes, a 30-day gap now for private sales, too.
What do you think the impact of that might be? Seems aimed at slowing down private transfers.
Well, it definitely fits a pattern in California, extending regulations that used to apply only to licensed dealers into the private sphere. It suggests a desire for more control over how guns move around, even between individuals.
And I saw a comment piece reflecting that concern. Someone named Shannon called California laws the scariest, feeling they're trying to restrict ownership altogether.
Yeah, that's certainly a perspective you hear. It shows how strongly people feel about these kinds of laws.
Definitely. And California didn't stop there on Jan 1st. They also expanded their gun violence restraining orders, GVROs, Assembly Bill 2917.
That's right. They broadened the reasons someone could get hit with a GVRO. It now includes, and I'm quoting here, hate-based threats made against groups protected by hate crime laws and threats of violence to advance political objectives.
Okay, so hate-based threats against protected groups. What groups does that cover?
The law lists race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, disability, gender, or sexual orientation.
So it's not just about a direct threat to one person anymore. It could be threats aimed at a whole group based on those characteristics, or threats made, say, to push a political agenda.
Exactly. It definitely widens the net for who could potentially be subject to a temporary firearm removal under a GVRO.
Interesting. Raises questions about how those kinds of threats are defined and assessed, I imagine.
For sure. It touches on complex issues around speech and intent.
Okay, let's shift gears. Colorado. They also had a law kick in January 1st, House Bill 241348. This one's about storing guns in cars.
Yes, specifically secure storage in unattended vehicles. It's quite detailed.
How so? What are the requirements?
For handguns left in an empty car, they need to be in a locked, hard-sided container, or locked in the glove compartment or center console.
Okay.
Or the vehicle itself needs to be locked. Or if it's an RV, but not your main home that needs to be locked. Or finally, in the locked trunk of an already locked vehicle.
Lots of options there, but all involve locking something. What about long guns, like rifles or shotguns?
Similar options, but there's one extra choice for long guns. They can be in a soft case if you also use a locking device directly on the firearm itself.
Got it. Any exceptions?
Yeah, a few. Doesn't apply to guns in farm or ranch vehicles or antique firearms. Also doesn't apply if you legally live in your RV or if you're actively involved in legal hunting.
Okay.
And there's a small accommodation for hunters with disabilities. They can use a locked, soft-sided case for their firearm during hunting activities.
So it seems like they're trying to be practical while boosting security. Fair enough. Next up, Delaware. House Bill 311, also Jan 1st.
Right. Delaware focused on gun-free zones. They expanded the definition of safe school zones.
How do they expand it?
They added colleges and universities to that definition. So now knowingly taking a gun onto any college campus in Delaware is a felony.
Wow, a felony. That's a pretty clear message about firearms on college grounds.
Absolutely. a significant step in defining those spaces as gun-free.
Okay, now let's hop over to Kentucky. House Bill 357, Jan 1st again. But this is different, right? It's about those merchant category codes, the MCCs.
Yes, Kentucky went the other way compared to some states we'll talk about. They banned the use of firearm-specific MCCs.
Ban them. So stores, credit card companies, banks, they can't be required to use a special code for gun or ammo purchases?
Exactly. They can't be required to use one, incentivized to use one, or even just assign one voluntarily if it's specific only to firearms, ammo, or accessories.
And the idea behind that is privacy, preventing tracking.
That's the stated intent, yes. To stop those purchases from being easily flagged and potentially reported to law enforcement just based on the transaction code.
Makes sense. We saw a comment related to this on the article from Jay, pointing out how cash is less common now, making digital purchases easier to track.
That's a really relevant point. As we move away from cash, the potential for monitoring spending habits, including on firearms, definitely increases.
And another commenter, Sean Curtis, followed up noting that some states, like Kentucky here, are actually passing laws to protect consumer privacy in this specific area.
Right. It really throws that debate into sharp relief. The tension between potential crime prevention through tracking and the privacy rights of legal gun owners.
Okay, Minnesota. They also had a Jan 1st effective date for part of House Bill 5247. This was about binary triggers.
Yes, a ban on binary triggers.
Could you just quickly remind us what those are?
Sure. A binary trigger fires one round when you pull the trigger and then another round when you release the trigger. So it significantly speeds up the rate of fire compared to a standard semi-automatic trigger.
Gotcha. And Minnesota's ban?
Pretty comprehensive. Bans possessing them at all. Doesn't matter if it's installed in a gun or just the trigger mechanism itself. Owning one is now illegal in Minnesota.
Okay, so a clear move against devices that increase firing speed. Now, New Hampshire, also Jan 1st, House Bill 1186. Back to the MCCs.
Yes, New Hampshire joined Kentucky on this one. They also passed a law banning the requirement or assignment of those firearm-specific merchant codes.
Same reason, presumably. To prevent flagging and reporting of gun and ammo purchases.
That's the idea, protecting the privacy of those transactions from this specific type of tracking.
It really is striking, isn't it? Seeing states go in completely opposite directions on the very same issue. Kentucky and New Hampshire banning them.
And as we're about to see, New York mandating them. It's a perfect example of the patchwork of regulations we have.
Speaking of New York, they had a law about their red flag system kick in February 6th, Senate Bill 3340, Assembly Bill 58873.
Right. This created a red flag registry. It basically requires the courts to notify a central statewide registry whenever they issue an extreme risk protection order, or ERPO.
So when a red flag order is issued, it goes into a central database.
Essentially, yes. The goal is better cooperation and information sharing between the courts and law enforcement when someone is temporarily prohibited from possessing firearms under an ERPO.
Makes sense. Centralizing the information. Now, New York and the MCCs, they have two laws coming up in day. Let's take the first one. Senate Bill 847A9A, Assembly Bill 9862A, effective May 1st.
Yes, and this is the complete opposite of Kentucky and New Hampshire. New York is mandating the use of a firearm-specific MCC.
Mandating it. For who?
For retailers, credit card companies, banks, basically anyone processing payments for commercial transactions involving guns, ammo, or accessories, both in-person and online sales.
And the stated goal there is?
The explicit intent is to allow banks and credit card companies to flag these purchases and potentially report them to law enforcement.
Wow. Okay, so one state bans it to protect privacy, another mandates it for potential reporting. That's stark.
It really is. And we saw that comment from JRC on the article just saying, amazing how some states are requiring MCC and others are banning them. Sums it up perfectly.
It does. But there's another New York MCC law, also effective May 1st. Senate Bill 745, Assembly Bill 439. What does this one do?
This one seems to refine the first mandate. It requires the MCCs to be even more specific. They have to distinguish between ammunition purchases and firearm purchases.
Ah, so not just gun-related, but specifically gun or ammo.
Exactly. It allows for a finer level of detail in tracking who is buying what, more granular surveillance of those transactions.
Okay. New York clearly going all in on using MCCs for tracking. Let's finish up the state list with Ohio. Senate Bill 58, effective April 9th. Where do they fall on MCC?
Ohio sided with Kentucky and New Hampshire. Their law bans the use of MCCs for gun and ammo purchases.
Okay, another state pushing back against that type of tracking. Did that Ohio law do anything else?
Yes. It also included a provision that forbids state lawmakers from ever passing a law that would mandate gun owners to have specific liability insurance.
Two things in one bill, then. Banning MCCs and preemptively banning mandatory gun owner insurance. And that was signed back in January.
Correct. Signed January 8th, took effect April 9th.
All right, so that covers the main state-level laws. The Pew Tactical article also mentioned a couple of broader trends they're seeing.
Yeah, one was states passing their own bans on auto-sears for handguns. Things like Glock switches or pistol converters.
Even though those are already illegal under federal law.
Right. So the practical effect of a state ban might seem limited, but states are still doing it. It shows a continued focus on devices that convert semi-automatics to function like automatics, increasing the rate of fire.
So more symbolic or just reinforcing the federal ban at the state level?
Could be a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's definitely a trend they noted.
And the other trend? Something about gun danger education.
Yeah, basically states requiring things like new pamphlets, signs in stores, maybe warning labels on packaging, things meant to educate about gun safety or risks.
And the impact of that? Probably minimal for most gun owners, maybe just more paperwork or notices.
That seems likely. The actual effect on informed gun owners is probably not huge, though the intent is likely public safety awareness.
Okay, so bringing this all together, we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of new laws kicking in or coming soon. What's the big takeaway for you?
I think the biggest thing is just how different the approaches are state by state. There's no single trend, really. You see these fundamental disagreements playing out, especially with the merchant category code's total opposites.
Yeah, the divergence is really clear.
And the specific things states are targeting: private sales, storage, triggers, campus carry. It varies quite a bit.
Absolutely, which just hammers home the point. You really, really need to know the specific laws in your own state because they are changing, and they are definitely not uniform across the country.
Couldn't agree more. Staying informed locally is key.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. When you see this patchwork quilt of laws, some states tightening restrictions, others focusing on privacy, some mandating tracking, others banning it, what does this fragmentation signal about where gun regulation is heading in the U.S. overall?
That's a great question. The fragmented gun laws across the U.S. show a deepening divide. Some states are expanding gun rights, while others are tightening regulations for safety and privacy. This signals that the country isn't moving toward a unified approach. Instead, gun regulation is heading in two opposing directions, depending on the state.
What are the potential long-term effects of these different paths, not just for gun owners, but for, society as a whole and the ongoing debate? Something to chew on.
Definitely something to think about. In the long run, these different paths could lead to a more divided America. Gun owners may face legal confusion across states, enforcement becomes inconsistent, and public trust erodes. It makes national debate harder, as there's no common ground or data to agree on. The result? A country split not just by laws, but by values and identity.
All right, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. Until next time, take care, shoot straight, and stay safe out there.